Hey everyone, Cole here with Classic Mini DIY. Welcome back to the next episode of the Bad Wolf mini build. This one picks up right where we left off on the last one, which means that I just finished filming the intro about 5 minutes ago, and now we are moving on to the block, which you can see is dangling from my engine lift right now, and we need to get this finalized and prepped for all of the rust prevention as well as the engine enamel. Now the kit that I'm using is from a company called POR15, so let me show you this. Alright, so I know this probably looks like a commercial, but it definitely is not. I have not been sponsored by POR15, but I have used their product in the past. I'm really happy with it, and I'm hoping that this product works just as well as only their rust prevention does. This stuff goes on like tar, and I swear to you, it never comes off. I mean, it is incredibly difficult to get off, which is great because it means that it prevents rust on the parts that you put it on. But that also means that when you get it on your skin and things like that, it'll stay there for a while. But what I have here is like the whole kind of kit that they recommend using for engine enamel. And it's a process. It's about $65 US. I have some Amazon links in my description below if you're interested in picking this up for yourself. They have a nice selection of colors. It's not huge, but it's kind of the primary ones that you'd want. They do have the like MG green that most of these engines were painted from the factory, but they also have a Ford Corporate Blue, which is what I'm going to be using on my engine. And this is kind of like a whole process. So what I'm going to be doing first is putting this cleaner degreaser on here. I'll be spraying that down. I'll be putting that on this block. It's already been really thoroughly cleaned by the machine shop, but my guess is that there's still a little bit of residue on there, and I want to make sure that this has a nice bonding surface so that the engine enamel really sticks and stays on there. Then I'll be using the metal prep, which is kind of a self-etching. It actually chemically bonds with the metal, and that actually creates the surface that's perfect for the rust preventative. And then we follow that up, obviously, with the engine enamel itself. Let all of that cure. And the one thing that I do want to mention about this engine enamel is it does take quite a bit of time for it to cure. This is not something that you just want to that you'll just like spray on or paint on real quick. You want to take your time with this, but you're going to get a result that's really long lasting. Hopefully this will be the last time I have to paint this motor. So fingers crossed, we'll see how that goes. Now, first things first, we want to degrease the surface and get it really clean. I also have just a few little pieces of debris and paint flake that I want to get off of here before we get into the whole project, but that should not take very long at all. All right, so now we've got everything taped off. We're ready to start degreasing this. You're going to need two things. You're going to need the degreaser, and then you're going to need a hose because you're going to rinse this off afterwards. Now, what I'm going to do is I've got a tote kind of sitting underneath here. That's going to collect most of the degreaser and all of the kind of debris that comes off. That way I can dispose of that fluid correctly and not destroy our environment. We're going to test the sprayer here, and we'll start spraying that degreaser on. Now, I'm kind of spraying in a little bit like kind of a soft way. I don't want to get a ton all over the place. I'm just going to be coating this really well. And then after we get this on here, I'm going to come back with a brush, kind of scrub it in a little bit, and do that with every side. So let's start. Now while we wait for this to dry, it's something worth noting that the reason that you have to use a degreaser and then use the metal prep is that the degreaser is what pulls all of that oil and grime off of the block. It's alkaline based and it's caustic, which means that it's not going to create a good surface for the paint to adhere to, which is why the metal prep is so important. So once this is finished soaking, I'm going to take my hose and I'm going to lightly rinse all of this off, which is part of why it's so important for you to block off any holes into the inside of the block if you have any of the bearings in there. And then once this is rinsed off, we have to get it really dry. And then once it's dry, we'll be able to actually put on the metal prep and make sure that the prep is nice and even and it actually etches the metal the way it needs to so it adheres to the paint. So let's get that hose and we'll start rinsing the sucker off. wanted to get this nice and clean, but I did not want to like blast it with water. I wanted to rinse it off, take my time, go slow, and instead of blowing it out with water, go over it many times with low pressure water. I feel that that's a little bit safer. I could be totally wrong. It might not have any difference at all, but it just makes me feel better. The next thing that we're gonna do is the metal prep. So let's spray that on. We're gonna kind of scrub it in the same way that we did before, and then we will come back and rinse it off just like we did with the first coat. Now with this, you're gonna wanna let it sit for at least 30 minutes with this metal prep on here, according to the bottle. And if there's areas that have a lot more rust, you're gonna wanna add time to that. Now, letting this sit doesn't mean letting it dry out. It's very important that it stays wet with the metal prep, because if it doesn't, it means that the metal prep's not actually doing anything. So as you can see here, I'm gonna go back over it here, make sure that stays wet. And I'm gonna do that with every side of the block. Now, I have my timer set for about 30 minutes, and I'm gonna be checking this throughout that time. During that 30 minutes, I'm gonna keep applying this metal prep, coming back, applying more. If it's necessary, if it's still wet, then I don't need to add any more of it. But main thing is, it stays damp with the metal prep. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for my favorite part, the part where we make it look pretty. And we start with our rust preventative. Now, you're probably looking at this thing and seeing 4 US ounces. How is that gonna be enough to cover the block? This thing will probably cover my block, my head, both of the subframes, and like spot treating underneath the car, and probably still have some left over. This stuff goes on really, really light, and it covers amazingly. So we'll start with this layer. We're gonna put this on, and then we're gonna let it sit between 2 to 6 hours. So I'm gonna start it right now. It's in the morning right now here in Charlotte, and then this evening I'll come back and then I'll reapply my engine enamel. Now when you apply this stuff, specifically the rust preventative, it actually dries faster when it's humid. So you heard me right. If it is damper outside, it is going to cure and harden faster. So for a place like Charlotte, where it's really humid right now, it'll probably be closer to the 2 to 3 hour range rather than the 6 hour range. Now what I found the best way to apply this is with one of these little foam brushes, and I'm a cheapskate, so I bought a whole bunch of the big ones, and then I cut these down with just a pair of scissors so that it fits into the little cracks and nooks and crannies. And we'll apply a little bit of this starting at the top of the block and then working our way down. Now it's really important that you don't get this in any of the thread holes, because if you do get it in the threads, you're gonna have to chase those threads, or you're gonna have to clean them out some other way, because this stuff will really make it difficult for you to screw bolts into. Now I'm gonna do this to all the different sides of the block. I'll show you guys what it looks like after it's done and when it's beginning to cure, and then we'll move on to the engine enamel. All right, so now we have all of our stuff rust protected. As you can see, I had some smaller parts I went ahead and did as well. And you guys also probably saw I did the head, that's sitting down here. But as you can see, it is nice, black, and rust protected. Okie doke, so now we are on the last stage, which is obviously applying the paint to this block. And I am going to be applying the paint the same way that I applied the rust preventative, and that's with one of my little foam brushes. And I've got my Ford Corporate Blue engine enamel, which I've stirred up real nicely here. And now we're gonna go ahead and apply this. All right, so So that color is looking pretty good. I am pretty happy with the way this is turning out so far. It does look like it will need a second coat based on the way that this is going on right now. So I will be putting one coat on here, and then I'll come back with a second coat once it gets kind of tacky and sticky to the touch, which is when they say that you're supposed to reapply if you put a second coat on. I am finding that while applying this, it is much easier to get a nice coat on if you are dabbing it on instead of brushing. I do come back through a second time after I've dabbed it on to get the bubbles out. That way it dries nice and smooth. All right, everybody, and there it is. A beautiful painted blue head block, and then all the timing cover and all that stuff. It is looking really, really good. I have to say though, I'm not totally blown away by the POR15 finish. It's really, really glossy, and it was incredibly difficult to keep the brush strokes from showing up on it. There's not a doubt in my mind that once this cures, it's gonna be incredibly strong. I don't think this is ever gonna come off. And then even if by some miracle some of this starts to flake off, the underside, the part that has the rust preventative, I know for sure that is never gonna come off. So I'm feeling pretty good about how this turned out overall. I think I would have liked a little bit lighter blue, but they didn't have an option for that. I did also paint, the timing cover, the timing plate here, but you can really see the brush strokes in this timing plate. I mean, I'm gonna try and kind of show you with the light there, but you can see there's a lot of brush stroke in that. I mean, it's not the end of the world. This thing is gonna be over here. It's not really gonna be seen. But it's something to consider if you're using this POR15 stuff. Other folks have had a really, really good experience with it. I, however, am kind of on the fence about it. I think that I would still do it again. Next time, I probably would just go with the green on the block. Maybe not for the car that I've got right now, but that green just looks really, really nice. But overall, I'm still gonna do the aluminum parts in the aluminum colored POR15. I'm hoping that turns out really well. That'll kind of make a uniform look to the engine and gearbox and everything. For right now, I'm gonna wrap up this episode. I'm getting ready to do the live stream that happens here in probably I don't know, 30 minutes or so. So that will be really cool. Hopefully I have lots of people turn out for that one. I've been advertising this one a little bit more than normal. But yeah, so the next episode, I'm either gonna be starting to reassemble the motor, or I'm gonna take the subframe out of the back of the Mini. I ran out of time over the holiday weekend, but I think that I am gonna be able to do it sometime this week. So stay tuned for those episodes. There's definitely a lot more coming up this week, but thanks so much for watching. And until I see you guys again, enjoy those Minis and motor on.